trail.
Gotcha.
Our friend Dan McGrath, who wrote the book called Voter Fraud Manual, The Voter Fraud Manual, and we've had him in as a guest, and we've placed a call to him today, and uncharacteristically, he hasn't been available. Is that right, Reader?
Yes, he has not responded.
He
to me.
he may
is
be
taking
sleeping. He
great
sent me. He sent.
umbrage. Yes, John?
He may be sleeping. He and I were trading emails till about 1 a.m. and then I noticed he sent me some more after I went to bed. So
He took great umbrage with us yesterday talking about voting. And he writes, I love you guys. I have rarely missed a podcast. GL is my favorite show, but you're going to make me as crazy as a music teacher. I begged you to stop talking about election law because you didn't know bleep about it. But I thought after spending an hour or so explaining it all to you in person and leaving behind 5 copies of my book, you've gotten a better grip on it, and my job there was done.
No.
Today's podcast, meaning yesterday, proved that assumption wrong. You returned to claiming you need ID to vote. And when Joe mentioned vouching, wait a minute, this is also addressed to John.
oh yeah,
You said you needed it, and when it came, you
okay, Joe? Should we turn off the...
no, we're fine.
Okay.
You returned.
Yeah, they're going to be okay.
Quit screwing around here. See? You returned to claiming you need ID to vote, and when Joe mentioned vouching, he must be referring to you, John.
Yes,
You said
yes.
you need ID for that too. No, wrong. Bad news,
Bad
man.
news, man.
Stop saying that. ID would defeat the whole point of vouching. I appreciate that you guys remembered that I visited, but nobody seems to remember what I said. Well, Dan, you know, when we need to be taken to task, we need to be taken to task.
Absolutely.
John, you may recall that I sent you links to official state government sources to demonstrate that you can both register and vote without any ID at all except a vouch person. Hundreds of thousands of voters became registered this way. Election day registration is the most common kind of voter registration in Minnesota. You conceded my point at the time, but seem to have deleted that information from your mind to return to your default, comfy, but erroneous narrative that we have secure elections. Minnesota is in the bottom 3 states ranked by the integrity of their elections. In separate legislative committees, so as to appear unrelated, bills were crafted that, 1, allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses, and 2, establish automatic voter registration from anyone applying for a driver's license. Everyone is assumed to be registering to vote when they get an ID unless they explicitly choose to opt out. Both of those bills were enacted last session. Can you puzzle out the impact of that combination of laws? Yes, I can now, Dan. If I apply for a driver's license and get one, I'm eligible to vote.
Okay.
but see here, I have this question into Dan. According to state law, to get your first license, you have to have proof of birth, like birth certificate, passport, something of that nature. So you would automatically, at that point, they would know you're not a U.S. citizen, and then they wouldn't pre-register. That's the way I'm reading the law.
Okay, John, but it sounds like you'd still get the driver's license.
Yes, you still get the license.
All
yes,
right.
but you wouldn't automatically be pre-registered to vote, which is what Dan's point was there.
Hold on.
I disagree, John. I'm going to go with Dan. I'm going to go with Dan.
Because I remember, and I brought this up yesterday. I'm the one that mentioned him during that conversation. You're welcome. But the point he made, I recall this vividly. He said someone can just vouch for you at the polling place. So the ID and all that, I mean, I agree with you what you said, John, but all of that is out the window. None of that matters.
Can we finish with the man who knows what he's talking about?
You may.
Let's just repeat this. In separate legislative committees, so as to appear unrelated, the bills were crafted that, 1, allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses. Let's stop right there. That suggests to me that you don't need anything. You just go in and get a driver's license. And 2, upon getting that license, it established an automatic voter registration.
Can I nitpick for a second?
Sure.
Isn't it just a state ID? It's not a driver's license, is it?
It's called a driver's license. I remember it was a kerfuffle in the legislature. We're giving driver's licenses to illegal aliens.
Either or,
Okay.
right? It can be either an ID or a driver's license. Yes, Kenny. Both.
Okay.
Both of these bills were enacted last session. Illegal aliens can vote, have voted, and will continue to vote. It's not hard to see with the tremendous influx of illegal immigrants combined with the law changes that will have more illegal aliens voting than ever before. I dedicated a chapter in my book to voting by non-citizens and demonstrated that it has already been a significant problem. Anyone who says otherwise is a moron or a liar. Our election system is broken
I'm number one.
severely. You're a moron.
I'm number 2.
Our election system is broken severely. Excuse me.
Yeah.
In order to have a chance of fixing it, people need to understand it. Propagating misinformation to suggest is not as bad as it actually is does your listeners a disservice, John. This is supposed to be a fact-based show, isn't it? Here are 2 facts. Minnesotans do not need ID to vote or to register to vote. And you can use vouching for weeks on end during early voting with no partisan citizen oversight. 2, illegal aliens do vote. It's super easy and not very risky. It's virtually impossible to prosecute after the fact. It's an easy prediction. More non-citizens will be voting than ever before. Good luck, Dan McGrath. Holy mackerel.
Am I the one that brought that up yesterday? I might have been. Boy, did I stir up a hornet's
I think
nest.
Joe did, actually.
Brought up what?
There's something about allowing
If immigrants
illegals in
can
so they
vote.
could vote. Pretty sure I brought that up.
Now, we do have a note from him from February of 2024. Again, it's addressed to John. I think we're still failing to connect on the facts about voter ID. I could actually tell you had more to say. Never mind. I don't know who wrote this, if it was John or Dan. Never mind, because I don't want to read John's, because Dan's the voting expert.
So why isn't this a bigger issue nationwide?
Well, look who governs the state of Minnesota, and look at the apathy expressed by the residents of Minnesota who have elected these people.
Why is it then when Republicans bring this up that they're just considered, right-wing psychos? Shouldn't both sides be concerned about this? Because this could work
Well,
against them.
To answer your question, Kenny, it's because it tends to benefit one side of the political aisle.
Well, let's
apparently.
continue to go with Dan McGrath, who wrote the voter fraud manual. This is also a recent email. Dear Mayor, esteemed councilors and aldermen, for the love of God, please stop talking about our election systems. Every time you do, I end up screaming at my speakers because of the gross misinformation you guys spread. John is beyond doubt the worst offender, and I'll give you, my dear fireworks commissioner, some credit for trying, but none of you know what the bleep you're talking about.
He's right. Yeah.
It's always more painful for me to listen to you when you attempt math on the air. It's like nails on a chalkboard. My credentials, when I was employed by Minnesota Majority Research, research I led into our election system resulted in the discovery of and prosecution of ineligible voters. My work on voter fraud led to numerous criminal convictions. There is no higher standard of proof than I can think of. My work was featured in the lead chapter of Hans van Spakovy, voting section, Justice Department attorney and Heritage Foundation fellow, and John Funn's Wall Street Journal columnist book, Who's Counting? It was the showcase feature in Eric Shawn's hour-long Fox News documentary special, Stealing Your Vote. I have brought several lawsuits against the Secretary of State for statutory and constitutional violations concerning elections and won several of those cases. I was a plaintiff in an election suit that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court and won. In 2011, I spent the entire legislative session working with Representative Mary Kiffmeyer, who prior had been Secretary of State for 8 years and later a state senator, drafting House File 210, a comprehensive election reform and voter ID bill that also involved working with attorneys from the state reviser of statutes office and reviewing every single election statute and rule on the books. 13 chapters of laws and hundreds of rules. I then testified and lobbied for the resulting bill, which was passed by both chambers, but unfortunately vetoed by Governor Dayton. House File 2010 details, Minnesota majority produced a video summary of House. Okay. In 2012, I was chairman of the committee to ratify the voter ID constitutional amendment. I participated in numerous high-level debates on voter ID. I wrote the book on voter fraud called The Voter Fraud Manual, which should be your homework assignment to read. Well, he's absolutely right. My lobbying work at the legislature later led to election law reforms, including cutting the number of unidentified voters another voter could vouch for from 15 to 8. That's still not good enough, but it was an incremental compromise. In short, when it comes to election law, I know what I'm talking about. Now that I've established that, firstly, please tell John, no, you do not need ID to vote in Minnesota. If you did, we wouldn't have worked so hard to enact an ID requirement, including an attempted constitutional amendment. Tell John to take a look at vouching. Once you understand the existence of Election Day registration and of vouching and still don't conclude the system is ripe for abuse, you're a bleeping moron. Here's a little primer on it that has pictures. So maybe you idiots can follow along.
So mean.
Well, he's right, though.
Yeah, he's right. But
And
he's mean.
he sent a link to a YouTube clip. Here's what the Secretary of State's website says about whether you need ID to vote. If your voter registration is current and active, you do not need to bring identification. This means you were successfully registered at least 21 days before Election Day and you have not moved or changed names since then. If you need to register or update your registration, or you have not voted in 4 years or more, you will need to show proof of residence before you vote. Note, it says if you need to register or re-register, you need proof of residence. Proof of residence can be 1, an ID card or driver's license, 2, a utility bill, or 3, someone to vouch for you. Photo ID is clearly not required. When I hear this kind of misinformation, it drives me up a wall. By the way, your fraud-denying news guy seems to be pretty selective when it comes to voter fraud stories. Have him take a look at this long list of voter fraud stories from mainstream news sites and ask why he didn't opt to cover any of these. And then, John, he listed them all. Finally, to the subject of unhoused voting, your discussion of which led you down the twisted path that prompted my ire to begin with. Of course, the homeless have the right to vote, and there is currently a procedure in place for that. One must declare a vicinity in order to establish which precinct to vote in. From the Secretary of State's website, if you are homeless, you can register to vote using the location of where you sleep as your address. You may need to go to the polling place with someone who can confirm where you are living. When you register to vote, you must provide your current residence. This is the place where you sleep. So if you sleep in a shelter, at a friend's house, or outside, that is your voting residence. If you sleep outside, write a description of its location on line 4 of your voter registration application. For example, in the northwest corner of Jefferson Park, near the intersection of Winston Avenue and Smith Road.
No. How can this be?
Yes, it's true.
Oh,
The change proposed is unnecessary, but by its language probably does not make it any easier to game the system by precinct surfing. The bill, House File 3557, isn't just about homeless voters, though, and among other tweaks, it also loosens up provisions on voting from student housing, which is more concerning to me than the proposed registration application change for homeless voters. Again, regards, Dan. Well, what it tells me is we're doomed.
It's over.
It's over.
I personally would like to thank you, Joe, for reading that 7-month-old email that you've already
Yeah.
read on the air. That
Very,
made a lot of
very
fun of me being
old.
that big of a dink to do
That's-
that.
I
That's
don't
cool.
think I previously read it.
Well, yeah, we
Yes,
read
yeah,
that
you
7
did.
months
You
ago
Oh,
did.
good. It bared repeating.
when we first got it. The only question I have, and still I'll wait for Dan to answer it, but according to the state law, the automatic registration can't happen without ID there where you automatically register.
Well, the
At
ID
the
could be the
office.
license that we're giving to illegals.
No, at the office
it
when you
can.
when you get a when you
Well, you
get a
just said you can
license,
go get a license.
when you get a license or an ID, you have to have a birth certificate or whatever.
proof that
Proof
you're
of-
standing there.
Yes.
Yeah, that you've been bored.
So that you have proof that you're
I beg to differ. And again, you're right. He'll have to answer it. I beg to differ. We allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses.
we certainly do, yes.
Okay, upon getting the license, you're registered to vote.
No, you
That's what it says. Establishes
it's not
automatic
what the law
voter
says.
registration for anyone applying for a driver's license.
May I?
Let Dan explain it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we've tried to call him. He's not answering his phone. He knows it's us. May I read to
I
you
don't blame him, actually.
something
I don't either.
that fits right in here yesterday? 3:21 p.m. headline in the first paragraph from the Minnesota Reformer headline: U.S. House Speaker withdraws spending bill that would require ID to register to vote.
got
U.S.
that in the
Speaker
news.
Mike Johnson, I'm hoping you will, pulled a 6-month stopgap spending bill from heading to the floor for a vote Wednesday, scuttling efforts by the GOP to show solidarity behind their plan, which included a provision requiring ID to register to vote in federal elections. So Republicans shut that down.
I'll cut all 4 of you some slack because you guys are all old and senile. How do you not remember any of this when he was in studio?
I do.
Oh, I
I
don't
do.
remember
I-
what
see,
I
I
did
didn't-
15 minutes ago.
Yesterday, I was surprised. Did we actually say yesterday we knew what was going on with vouching? I thought we said we didn't.
No,
know.
but that's why I mentioned Dan's name yesterday in the first place.
Can I give you one reason?
Yeah.
This is podcast number 1,382.
Okay.